an easy-to-understand explanation of Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. What is Theravada Buddhism? Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. What are Theravada, Mahayana, Pure Land, Zen, Vajrayana, and other different concepts? There's a saying that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Therefore, the question that needs to be raised is, when and where do we start our journey on the spiritual path? Most of us start searching for our spiritual path quite late because we do not feel the need for spirituality when we are young. The common belief is that temples cannot solve the worries and sufferings of youth, and that temples are meant for the elderly to accumulate merit by engaging in charitable acts, offering services, etc., to ensure good fortune in the future. If you have set foot on that spiritual path, then it is essential to thoroughly understand the path you are walking on. Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, long ago discovered a unique path that helps us eliminate all suffering and find true freedom. After discovering this path, the Buddha, who was then still very young, dedicated the rest of his final human life to showing us that path, pointing the way with his own finger. Today, we are those who practice by following the Buddha's finger and walking in his footprints, clearly marked on that path. We are not unlike a group of people walking together on a path, a group that is incredibly diverse, differing in many aspects such as age, health, culture, and level of understanding. Some walk calmly and quietly, while others are busy helping and guiding others, even offering their own backs to carry the weak. Still, others prefer to stand at bus stops, waiting to be picked up. This does not even include the pushing, pickpocketing, or deceiving that sometimes occurs. Moreover, there are many who do not look in the direction pointed out by the Buddha, but instead search for lost or discarded belongings of others, only to pick them up, carry them on their backs, or balance them on their heads, stumbling as they walk. Additionally, there are also groups of people walking in the opposite direction, and we must step aside to avoid colliding with them. Looking to the sides of the road, we also see many chaotic scenes. Markets, shops, theaters, gambling houses, as well as scenes of deception, stabbing, shooting, explosions, fires, collapsed bridges, etc. Some people stop to watch these scenes while others still wish to join in. In this video, let us take a step back and sketch out a simple image of the path with the group of people trudging along it, to help each of us find ourselves on that path and choose the best way to move forward. When the Buddha was still alive, he taught the path to everyone according to their different levels of understanding. He spoke to simple farmers, but he also once raised a flower and did not say a word to teach the path to others. This event shows that while the path is always one, it has many different aspects. Therefore, the teacher must use many different teaching methods. After his passing, the path itself became the teacher, guiding us. The disciples gathered together to maintain the path, keeping it clear and clean. They removed the trash, cleared obstacles, and expanded it. Each time they did this, it was called a Council of the Dhamma, with the purpose of adapting to the currents of thought and the unique cultural traits of each era. Due to the differing temperaments of the disciples, the path has undergone some changes and has acquired new decorations, making it look somewhat different. In addition to those wearing saffron robes, one can also see people on the path wearing black, blue, deep red, and brown robes. Indeed, as early as the Third Council held in the 3rd century BCE, 2 different sects had emerged. Later, at the First Council in the 1st century CE, these 2 sects doubled, and each sect branched into many schools. In total, there were 18 schools. However, most of these schools faded away, with only one school surviving to this day in a new form known as Theravada Buddhism or Early Buddhism. At the same time, around the 1st century CE, a movement known as Mahayana emerged on the path. Mahayana later split into many sects, schools, and sub-schools, each advocating different practices. In summary, there are currently 2 main trends or schools on the path: Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. The difference between these 2 trends lies more in practice than in the goal, which is always the same. Theravada Buddhism, also known as Southern Buddhism or Hinayana, is called early because its foundational teachings are entirely based on ancient scriptures, the oldest and most orthodox scriptures known as the Tipitaka. However, it is difficult to determine whether the early scriptures or Mahayana scriptures are older, since all written scriptures appeared around the 1st century BCE. Theravada Buddhism is also known as Southern Buddhism because it later developed in countries to the east and south of the Indian subcontinent, including Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, and Cambodia. However, this naming is not entirely accurate because most of these countries, such as Myanmar, Burma, Thailand, and Cambodia, initially followed Mahayana Buddhism and only later switched to Theravada Buddhism due to the decisions of the ruling powers at that time. Calling Theravada Buddhism Hinayana, lesser vehicle, is even less accurate because the term Hinayana was introduced in Mahayana scriptures to distinguish it from the new practice of this sect. According to Mahayana, the practice should not solely focus on seeking enlightenment for oneself, but must also include helping all sentient beings achieve liberation. In short, calling Theravada Buddhism Southern Buddhism or Hinayana is not quite correct. If we do not want to call it early, we can refer to this Buddhist sect as Theravada. In Pali, Theravada means the ancient way or the old teaching. So, what are the fundamental differences between Theravada and Mahayana? The first difference lies in the scriptures. The second is that Mahayana's practices are broader and more worldly. The basic teachings of Theravada Buddhism are determined by ancient or orthodox scriptures called the Tipitaka, while Mahayana scriptures include both the Tipitaka and later texts, written from the 1st century BCE to the 5th and 6th centuries CE, including the later Tantra texts, written from the 8th to the 10th centuries. However, all sects claim that their scriptures originated during the historical Buddha's time, citing that the Buddha taught according to different levels and aimed at different audiences. The relevant scriptures were hidden to avoid being lost due to wars and looting, only to be discovered when the conditions were right. Indeed, the discovery of hidden scriptures has occurred in the past in Tibet. In conclusion, Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism are not different sects, but rather two different attitudes or approaches to practice that progress along a common path. In application, Theravada Buddhism requires practitioners to separate their activities from worldly life, strictly observe the precepts, constantly remind themselves to let go, and aim for the liberation of an arhat. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes the ideal image of a bodhisattva who refuses ultimate enlightenment to remain in the world to continue helping all sentient beings. If one wants to enter Mahayana steadily and easily, it is beneficial to have some minimal understanding of Theravada Buddhism. This does not mean that Theravada Buddhism is merely a stage, but rather that it is a complete and comprehensive sect in itself. Mahayana Buddhism, while it contains many deep aspects, also offers a wide variety of practices. Regardless, if one starts on the path with the teachings of Theravada, there will come a time when another need naturally arises, prompting the practitioner to choose the way of Mahayana. In truth, this is not about abandoning Theravada when entering Mahayana, as the precision and purity of Theravada are always necessary for the practitioner. In summary, Theravada and Mahayana complement each other. At first glance, Mahayana may seem so complex that some Theravada practitioners may think that Mahayana has deviated from the path. However, in reality, these transformations are just an evolution, expanding the path into our diverse world and bringing new and deeper aspects to Buddhism as a whole. Theravada Buddhism claims to adhere to the teachings of the Buddha, but it has also evolved over time to adapt to local contexts and different trends. Generally speaking, Theravada Buddhism can be seen as somewhat orthodox, strict, and always concerned with adhering to what is recorded in the ancient scriptures. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism is more open and somewhat more worldly. So, what is Mahayana Buddhism really? If Theravada emphasizes the pure image of an arhat, Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes the responsibilities of a bodhisattva on the path. If practicing Theravada, one should follow the arhat ahead. If practicing Mahayana, one will walk alongside the bodhisattva and act as a bodhisattva. Moreover, in addition to the ideal image of the bodhisattva, Mahayana Buddhism also incorporates all kinds of local deities, both benevolent and fierce, and numerous Buddhas also appear. Thus, the path becomes more crowded and lively with Mahayana. Mahayana Buddhism consists of three main sects or schools: Pure Land, Zen, and Vajrayana. Long ago in India, a wealthy and very intelligent king renounced the world, took the Dharma name Hamara, and vowed that after attaining Buddhahood, if any sentient being sincerely prays, he would lead them to the Pure Land. After many lifetimes of practice, he attained complete liberation and became a Buddha named Amitabha, capable of leading sentient beings according to his earlier vow. If a sentient being wishes to be led to the Pure Land after death, they must sincerely call upon his compassion. This is the Pure Land method. However, it is also essential to understand that Amitabha Buddha vowed that as long as there is still one sentient being not yet liberated, he will not enter the Pure Land. This shows a higher level of the Pure Land, the close connection between compassion and fundamental enlightenment. The teachings of the Pure Land are based on three scriptures: the Infinite Life Sutra, the Amitabha Sutra, and the Contemplation Sutra. The Pure Land method focuses only on faith and prayer, so it is often considered a relatively easy practice. Nevertheless, this method also presents some challenges that are not very conducive to deeply understanding the teachings of the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Zen Buddhism, also known as Chan in China or Zen in Japan, was systematized in China in the 6th century by the Indian teacher Bodhidharma. However, Zen Buddhism is often believed to have originated from the anecdote known as Niyam Hoa Vitio, the flower sermon, from the time of Siddhartha Gautama. During a lecture, the Buddha held up a flower but did not say a word. The assembly was puzzled, but one disciple, Mahākāsyapa, suddenly smiled. The Buddha's silence and Mahākāsyapa's smile symbolized the direct perception of reality beyond the conventions and dualities of language. Thus, Mahākāsyapa is considered the first patriarch of Indian Zen Buddhism, and Bodhidharma is the 28th patriarch who brought Zen Buddhism to China. Zen Buddhism can thus be seen as a shortcut, and if it is called a shortcut, it naturally implies a short and difficult path. This is precisely what makes it the opposite of the Pure Land method mentioned above. The specific scriptures of Zen Buddhism are almost non-existent, except for a Mahayana Sutra that is very close to Zen Buddhism, the Lankavatara Sutra, and a few other collections of koans. Koans are statements or short stories that are often surprising, illogical, or seemingly absurd, designed to help the practitioner break free from the traps of thought, transcend all reasoning based on conventional understanding and concepts, and approach the true nature of all phenomena directly. This direct perception of reality is enlightenment. These are the basic concepts of Pure Land and Zen Buddhism. The third major school of Mahayana is Vajrayana, also known as Tantric Buddhism, a complete vehicle of Buddhism that includes the entire foundational teachings of Buddhism, from the Tipitaka to the Mahayana scriptures, and most importantly, the Tantric scriptures. Vajrayana is often misunderstood as Tibetan Buddhism. In reality, it is a very large school, officially formed and systematically organized in India around the 8th century, and later spread to northern countries like Tibet, Mongolia, China, Japan, and also to southern countries like Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and Indonesia, before these countries transitioned to Theravada Buddhism. Concrete evidence of the presence of Vajrayana throughout this region is the vast remains of Tantric Buddhism in the capital city of Pagan in Myanmar, and the world's largest Tantric Buddhist temple, Borobudur, on the island of Java in Indonesia. Tantra means that which protects the mind, keeping it stable and unaffected by disturbing emotions that can scatter it. The unique practices of the Vajrayana differentiate it from other Buddhist schools. This practice utilizes all the power of the mind's energies to transform them into forces that drive toward enlightenment. For example, a tree that produces bitter and toxic fruits would, according to other Buddhist schools, be uprooted and destroyed so that it cannot grow back. But in Vajrayana, the practitioner must swallow the toxic fruits and transform them into vital and powerful energy to aid in their practice. In short, it means transforming all the power of all emotions, even the most disturbing ones, into the power of zeal and wisdom. Moreover, Vajrayana practices involve many complex symbols and rituals, mandalas, mantras, etc. Therefore, practicing Vajrayana or Tantric Buddhism requires the guidance and assistance of qualified teachers. Dear friends, these are some sketches of the Theravada path, representing fundamental and steady steps that are thus very pure. The Pure Land path promotes gentle steps, which may require a long time to reach the destination. Zen Buddhism, on the other hand, is a reverse approach and is considered quite challenging, requiring mastery of the mind's operations and direct perception of reality, and thus may require specific qualities suited to this practice. Finally, Vajrayana appears to be the most comprehensive and dynamic, but it is also very complex and diverse, requiring extraordinary determination and the guidance of a qualified teacher. On this path, there are always practitioners who walk while looking back, or who still enjoy watching the diverse scenes on both sides of the road. There are those who limp and rely on each other for support. Some sit down to bandage the wounds of those who stumble, and there are those who walk very quickly. However, all people on the path may reach the final stage one day. So what will that final stage be like? The further you go, the wider and more open the path becomes, filled with light. Then at some point, the traveler may suddenly feel that the road has completely transformed, with all the landmarks and guides seemingly disappearing. There is no longer any distinction between forward, backward, right, left, up, down, etc. As a result, even if the traveler wants to, they can no longer take another step, nor can they retreat. It feels as if space, time, the path, and oneself have all become one. Even when trying to look back with the mind, the traveler no longer sees the path. The previous schools such as Theravada, Pure Land, Zen, and Tantra also disappear, or at least no longer hold any attraction, much like the marbles, stones, or jump ropes one was once passionate about in childhood. All phenomena dissolve, no longer creating any interaction, and the knots of interdependence are untied. The impermanent nature of phenomena and the law of cause and effect no longer have any impact. This signifies that the traveler is taking the final step on the path. After this step, there is nothing to be born and nothing to be destroyed. Everything stops, and the adventure ends here. Dear friends, that is the content of this video. What do you think? Please comment below to share your thoughts. Wishing you and your family peace and happiness.